I used to travel a lot for business. 20 years of flying around the country, attending business meetings and going to events meant I was very used to flying, and it didn't faze me. Flying to the Philippines, a country I'd never been before, that was different, and it was really exciting. I was going to the Philippines to look at the possibility of retiring there, as well as to have a great vacation. Cebu in particularly. I'd heard lots of amazing things about it, and the thought of being able to go and see it for myself meant I was pretty excited. I was 48, not too far away from retirement, and I got to the point where I was starting to feel like I'd had enough of working. My kids had already left home, living their own lives. I'd been divorced a few years before, and there was nothing holding me there anymore. I kept thinking about doing something different and having a change of pace and scenery, and that's how I found myself sitting on the plane to Manila. I'd been to Thailand in the past, and I knew a few people retired there, and that was always somewhere I was interested to go. But from what I understood about the Philippines, there were a lot more things that reminded you of America there, a lot more so than Thailand. And to have some of the trappings of home, that was something I was interested in. I wasn't staying in Manila for long. I had a connecting flight booked to Cebu a few hours after landing. But by the time I touched down in Manila, I was all ready to stop flying. It's a long way to get there, and those 3 hours waiting on the ground for the plane to Cebu, they seemed to last for an eternity. When I finally did get to Cebu, and I immediately loved it. It felt like a tropical paradise. A colleague of mine talked about going there years ago, saying how much he liked it. About the beaches, the people, the slower pace of life. Everything he described was just I imagined it. And that's what it was like. There was nothing out of the ordinary. It was just perfect. The heat hits you. Very different to the weather I left back at home. And the taxi ride from the airport was interesting. Seeing lots of things for the first time. It was a great experience. And there was already this feeling I had a connection to the Philippines, even though I'd only just left the airport. The hotel was quite close to the centre of the city, walking distance to many of the most famous places. I was staying there only a while, before moving to a resort a bit out of the main area, next to a beach. I only had one intention when I was there, to relax, explore, and try out some of the local dishes, and just enjoy myself, while at the same time thinking about what it would feel like to live there permanently. I did some snorkeling at one point. The waters were so clear you could hardly believe just how perfect everything seemed to be. I'm still exploring the city at this point. That was an eye-opening experience along Colon Street, and I was looking forward to going for a more relaxing time in a few days. I found some of the food in the Philippines to be good. Lechon, that's delicious, and as a big seafood lover, the selection of seafood was also next level. But some of the local style dishes I had a hard time enjoying. Plenty of restaurants that sold the food I was more used to, and the prices, although a lot more expensive than local Filipino food, was slightly cheaper than you would pay at home for something similar. A few days later, I moved to the hotel by the beach. A resort-style hotel, breakfast included, an amazing swimming pool, friendly staff. It was just as good as similar hotels back at home. 5-star luxury. But it did cost money, obviously, and it wasn't cheap. It was $250 a night, and in the Philippines, some people don't earn that in a month. But it was worth it for me. I'm on vacation, and I'm enjoying myself, so there's nothing wrong with splurging from time to time. It was from this hotel that I would leave to go on a snorkeling trip or go sit down at a beachside cafe, and in the evenings I'd go for a walk along the beach. It was during one of those evening walks on the beach that I started speaking to a girl who was walking in the other direction. She was walking with 2 of her friends, but I just kind of caught eyes with her and started talking. I'd spoken to lots of people during my walks around. Speaking to a girl or even a guy, there's nothing strange about that. I'm a very outgoing sort of person, and that's just who I am. But she's not only being polite and pretending like I wanted directions to somewhere. She's also smiling, offers to show me. Really, I thought going above and beyond to help me. I really appreciated that. She was a lot younger than me. I'd found out not long later she was 23, but she had a maturity about her that made her look and act like she was 10 years older. It was a funny situation. I'm speaking to her, asking the directions to a nice restaurant, and her friends are giggling. And they both sort of indicate something to her, and they walk off, leaving her alone with me. She says that she'd take me to the restaurant and show me. I thought that was very kind of her, and as we're walking along the beach, she's talking to me and chatting about all kinds of things. And in the moment, I start to feel young again. I've got a new lease on life. And when we get to the restaurant, she asks if I want any company. That sounded better than anything I could have expected, and we both went into the restaurant and sat down at a table overlooking the beach. And before that, not long ago, I was walking on the beach by myself, completely minding my own business. Saw her, started to talk. Now somehow I'm sitting in a restaurant with her, and we're clinking glasses in a cheers. That's when it all began. She started telling me about herself. She came from not too far away from where we were. She worked at a restaurant not far away. As was common with many people that I met, she had the burden of helping her family, if ever they were struggling. She was so polite and seemed very kind, and when I started talking about myself, she seemed to want to know more. She wanted to know exactly what it was like at home in America, having someone show such interest in your life. It really gives you good feelings, and that's undeniable. I felt like she was pursuing me in that moment, not the other way around. And to have someone show that kind of interest in you, and the person who's showing that interest in you is the type of girl that you'd only usually speak to in your dreams. It does send your head swirling. It makes you think things that, if you weren't in the position, you would never think or dream about. I didn't even want to go to that restaurant. It was just an excuse to strike up a conversation that I expected to last 5 minutes at the most. But after being in the restaurant for 3 hours, I think it's time to say goodbye and try to get these crazy feelings out of my head before I allow them to take hold. I thanked her for showing me where the restaurant was and having a nice meal with me, and I was going to leave it at that. Then she asked for my number. I'd got a local number as soon as I arrived, and as soon as I had that number, I knew that I would be able to speak to people locally. And seeing as though she asked for my number, I wasn't about to not give it to her. I gave her my number, and then she puts it in her phone and calls me immediately. Now I have her number, and I added it as a contact. She left smiling, and I'm thinking did that just happen? But I knew I wouldn't call her. I didn't expect her to call me either. But she did, the following day, in the morning when I was down having breakfast. She just said she had a great time the night before, and I could hear chuckling sounds very faintly, like her friends were listening in, telling her what to say. But the fact she called me, I thought that was kind of her. I told her I had a good time, and I was about to hang up, but she said, "Are you doing anything later? I'd love to meet up with you again." I knew I needed to be careful. An older Western guy, young Filipina local girl. I'd heard stories, but against my better judgment, I told her I'd be delighted to see her that evening, and she said she would come and meet me at my hotel, then we could go somewhere together. I didn't think anything about it the rest of the day, but at the allotted time, she showed up. Only this time, she's really made herself look beautiful. She's done her hair, perfect setting, makeup, gone the whole 9 yards. And I felt very underdressed in an old shirt and some shorts, and I even asked her if I should go and change, but she told me not to bother. That's when she grabbed hold of my hand and led me out of the hotel. "Don't let yourself get carried away," I kept saying. "Don't let yourself get carried away." After we left the hotel, we got a taxi to the area that I stayed in when I first arrived in Cebu, the main city, and she took me to a great restaurant that served lechon. I guess she remembered me talking about how much I liked it the previous day. Just telling me all about her life. I'm ordering drinks as well, and I'm just taking things as they come. I'm not going in with any expectations. I'm not planning for anything to happen. If anything, I'm trying to avoid something happening. But if they did, I would allow it to. That's the reason I gave to myself, expecting that things would never get too far. But after we went to the restaurant, she took me to a club. I felt very out of place there. Most of the people were a lot younger than me, but she just kept saying, anyone can come here. Age is just a number. People are just people. If someone's 20 and someone's 60, it doesn't matter. They're still allowed to enjoy themselves. And you are allowed to be happy. I took what she said to heart and thought I might as well just enjoy it. The loud music in the club and the fact it was packed, it was a little out of my comfort zone, but she seemed to be really enjoying it. She started dancing with me, and it was fun, just like I was in my 20s again. It was getting quite late, and she whispered something in my ear. I like you, she said. I've never met a man like you before. Shall we go back to your hotel? What was I meant to say? I could say no and run away and not lose myself in this madness. I could say, definitely, let's go back to the hotel, and I could enjoy myself, maybe more than I've ever enjoyed myself before, and then somehow tell myself, I'm never going to do that again. Or I could say yes, let's go back to the hotel, and then every decision I made moving forward from then would make me more close to her. I chose the latter. It's as though it chose me. I couldn't help it. And when she asked me if I wanted to go to the hotel, my brain is screaming at me, don't do it, don't do it. It's relentless. But I completely ignored that and just convinced myself that it doesn't have to turn out badly. It could be a one-off. But I should have known myself well enough to know that once something like that takes hold, letting go is difficult. We started spending more time together after that, and within a few weeks there was nothing that I cared about more than her. She became my life, and I thought that I became her life. She convinced me that age difference wasn't a problem. She convinced me that we went well together, and she convinced me that I wasn't doing anything wrong. She convinced me. And when you've got a beautiful girl like that convincing you, you start to change. You start to think, maybe she is one of the real ones, and maybe she really does see something in me. I'd ask her, when we met, if she had any children, and she said she didn't. No, sir, she said, no children. Things would have been different if she had had children. As soon as she told me she didn't, though, I asked her again when I'm starting to get serious with her, and she confirmed she didn't. But as soon as she confirmed she didn't, I had a small wave of relief wash over me. I'd already had 2 kids who were grown up, and I felt like that was enough. The idea of starting over with young kids at my age would have been a complete deal breaker. But her answer removed any potential complication that could rear its ugly head at some point in the future. It was only a week after meeting her that she's staying with me at my hotel. She keeps introducing me to people as her boyfriend. She keeps calling herself my girlfriend, and every time she says that, she smiles and seems to be proud. Everything she did in a way, but I was powerless to stop. I couldn't do anything about the feelings I was having for her, and I was falling further and further under her spell. When my initial vacation time was nearing its end, I didn't want to leave. I still had a year's work left, but I came up with an excuse that I had to extend my time for a few weeks. And because I'd worked at the company for so long, they allowed me to, and I extended my stay for another 2 weeks. The thought of leaving became unbearable, and during those weeks, I feel like our relationship solidified. She's everything any man would want, and I suppose if you have to think honestly about it, is she just playing this part? A few days before I was due to leave, we were walking hand in hand on the beach, and she turned to me and told me she loved me. I wasn't expecting that. I felt more of an infatuation, but because she said it, I felt like I had to, and I told her that I loved her as well. She kept saying how fortunate she was to have met me, how she feels her life is going to be better, how she feels like she's got someone in her life who can look after her, but who she can also look after. When she starts talking about this love she felt, you could see it seemed real. Her eyes started to well up with tears, and she started talking about not wanting me to go. I told her I was a year away from retirement. I had to go back, no matter what. But it wasn't that long. She just kept telling me how much she loved me and how much she didn't want me to go, and that made it even more difficult. I knew that there was no point trying to get her to go to America. By the time her visa would be arranged, I'd already be retired, and we sat down and talked the following day about our plans for the future. We could keep in touch every single day, and in a year's time, I could come back after retiring and we could be together. She kept saying how much she liked the sound of that, but she also kept saying she didn't believe I would go back. Every time I promised I would, she looked at me and said, "No, you won't. I don't believe you." "What about if we get married?" she said. "I always wanted to get married, and I love you so much. I don't want to get married to anyone else." "If we get married, then it won't be so bad if we have to spend 1 year apart." And there I was, seriously considering getting married after knowing her for such a short amount of time. But the way she said it, the reasoning behind it, it all made sense to me, and I thought, why not? It only took me 5 minutes of thinking after she brought it up, and I agreed to marry her. She was delighted. I didn't know how to do that in the Philippines, but we did get married, although I had to extend my stay again while we did that. Luckily, my work understood, and I just told them I would take no vacation days until I finally retired, and I'm very thankful that they agreed. We got married in Cebu. It took a while to get all the paperwork, trips to government offices. I even met up with her family, all of them. They were all equally as nice as her, welcoming me with open arms, and they seemed to be happy for her. It was not one of those situations where you get to the family's house and you're expected to pay any money or give them anything. None of that. She was just, I think, trying to make it like I would want it to be. But it was great after we got married. A few days later, though, I had to leave, and I wouldn't see her again for what would be about 11 months. Leaving was awful. She cried, I cried. She hugged me tighter than she'd ever hugged me before, and just said, "I will see you soon." Somehow the fact that we were married, that made me feel like I will definitely see her again, and I think she felt the same about that. But I said goodbye to her and flew from Cebu to Manila and then straight back home with one stop. As soon as I got home, I called her, and that became a constant, speaking to her every day with video calls, and it was clear that she was with her family all the time. Every day that we spoke, on video, I can see the family in the background. I can see where she is, and it's just a countdown until I can be there with her. When I tell friends about the position I found myself in, initially they were very judgmental. I suppose you'd expect them to be. But when I told them that she was the one who seemed to be interested to start with, she was the one who suggested these things, plus I need to mention at this point I have not sent or given her or her family even 1 cent. She told me she didn't expect me to send any money when I was in America. She knew that if I had to send money, I may feel uncomfortable about that. It was about a week since I'd been back, and I'm video calling her, and I could see some damage in the family's house. She pointed it out on video. There had been a big storm, and because the house wasn't built on a very strong foundation, one of the walls had blown down. They'd managed to fix it together the best they could, but it was one of those bodge jobs that would have to do. And because that was being fixed when I called her, she walked out into the local area and showed me around. I'd already met her family, I'd already been there, but I'd never actually looked there, if that makes sense. I was too busy speaking to her family, understanding how things work, everything like that, to actually take in what it was like there. But the more she showed me, the more beautiful I felt the place was. I offered to help fix the house for her family, but she said, "Don't worry about it, it's already been done." But that was the first time I started to think like where she was from, that environment, that would be the perfect place to live in retirement. It wasn't too far away from the hotel I stayed at, probably a 10-minute drive, so that could be a big positive. I had an idea in my mind that building a house there could be our future. I'd reasoned, and although I knew lots of people built houses and ended up having problems with their partners, I'd also seen many people who had built houses who were there years and years later. I kept thinking about it and weighing up the pros and cons, and one day, when I was feeling very happy when we spoke, I said to her, "How about we build a house close to there?" Her eyes lit up. Even though we were speaking on video, I could tell how excited she was at the prospect. But even then, she said that sounds great, but we should wait for you to come back. I thought the fact that she was saying things like that, and she'd never asked me for anything, meant that I could trust her even more. And I told her by the time I get back, it could already be built. Just video call me and let me see. See if I like the location of the land. See if I like the plans for the house. And if that's good enough, that's good. As soon as I said that, she didn't try to say otherwise, and she said she would look into that as quickly as possible. She seemed to be a little bit overwhelmed when I told that to her. And from the bit of research I'd done, all I said was, make sure you use a reputable builder. She said she would, and I left it with her. I began sending money, initially for a plot of land, then for materials and labour. She managed everything on the ground, and now we were speaking every day for multiple hours, and I'm watching the progress. The time difference, as you'd expect, caused that to be quite difficult. I'm not sleeping properly just so I can speak with her. When the time comes to choose the interior decoration, she's video calling with me. When she's in the shop, everything she's trying to do involves me every step of the way, and I really appreciated her because of that. I had enough money so that building this house wouldn't affect my retirement either way. But still, when it was ready up to a standard that I was happy with, I'd spent about $80,000. And from the looks of it at least, when I was speaking with her on video, the house looked everything as good as the plans that were drawn up in the early stage. A reputable builder was used, but it did cost more than someone who could just build any sort of house. But I thought it was worth it in order to make sure we had a good quality construction. I can remember the day I retired, going into work for the last time. I'd given them decades, and they gave me a send-off, a bit of a party. But just like that, I didn't have to work anymore, and I was going to be moving to the Philippines very soon to be with the love of my life. If I wasn't speaking to her, I was thinking about her. She became my world. I would have done anything for her, and I couldn't wait to get back to the Philippines to be with her and live in our house together. I kept my house in America, and my investments were more than adequate to live a great life in the Philippines with my beautiful wife. I didn't take much with me. Everything could be bought in the Philippines, and I just thought I would get new things when I got there. New things for a new life. Getting on the plane that time was different to the time before. Knowing what to expect, knowing someone's waiting for you. It really is a great experience when you're following your dreams, the dreams that you thought about, and the fact they're actually coming true. I arrived in Manila, only this time I didn't go immediately to Cebu. I stayed a few days there because I hadn't seen it on my last trip, and I was thinking about looking around and seeing if we could maybe buy a small condo there, spend most of our time in our house in Cebu. If we wanted a change of scenery, we could go to the condo in Manila. I looked at some available units, and that was something I was going to talk to her about when I saw her. When I landed in Cebu, the heat was just as I remembered, but this time it felt welcoming. She was meeting me at the airport, and when I saw her and she ran over to me and jumped on me and gave me a hug, saying how happy she was, that I was there, how much I'm going to like the house, how she can't wait to start living with me, and I was understandably extremely happy to see her after all that time. The taxi ride was different this time. We weren't going to a hotel, we were going home, our home, and that was a strange experience, but one that I was enjoying. It took 30 to 40 minutes, maybe slightly longer, to get to the house. We got out of the taxi, I got my bag, and the taxi driver drove off. At this point, there is no indication that anything other than what I thought was happening was happening. Apart from the look on her face started to change from a look of joy and happiness as we set off in the taxi, to a look that starts to get more serious and like she's got something on her mind that she's worried about. I wasn't thinking anything. But when we got out of the taxi, she looked at me in a way like I'd never seen her look before, and she said, "I've got something to tell you. I'm really sorry I didn't tell you before. I still love you the same, everything is just the same, I still want a life with you, but I need to tell you something." My mind starts racing, thinking what does she want to tell me? But I didn't need to wait too long. "I've got 2 kids, she said, and they're in the house now with my mom." When she told me, her face turned pale. She glanced at me and then to the door. My son is 5 and my daughter is 3. Talk about having your world turned upside down. The retirement that I had envisaged with her, in this house that I had built for her and us to live in, everything was built on a lie. I couldn't believe it when those words came out of her mouth. She could tell I was shocked. She could tell that I didn't like what I heard, And she kept saying, nothing will change, nothing will change, nothing will change. I can promise you nothing will change. I thought back to the time I asked her if she had kids. And I said to her, you told me you didn't have kids. You said you didn't have kids. I asked you. I know, she said. She was crying a lot at this point. I know I didn't tell you, but I didn't think I would get this far. I didn't think I would love you. I was afraid to tell you. I was starting to feel angry, and I shouted at her. Afraid of what? Afraid I wouldn't marry you if I knew the truth? She was crying even more, and she nodded. She was unable to speak because she was so visibly upset. And then I pointed at the house. What about this? You let me send $80,000 to build this house? This house that was meant for me and you? You let me do that knowing that I would arrive and find out the truth? You let me pay for this? Her crying intensified even more, and she kept saying she didn't think I would mind, that she still loved me and nothing would change. She told me that she planned to tell me before we started building the house, but she loved me so much that she wanted to make sure I would come back and be with her. She then said that she thought I could accept them, and accept they would be part of our lives. And then she said, we can go away regularly, and my mom can help look after them. We can have a lot of time together, just me and you. I stood there completely taken aback. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to do. But here was a girl who, apart from the fact she'd lied to me about not having kids, she hadn't done anything else that perhaps would indicate there was something going on. But this was a big lie. She could see I was really angry and upset, and she wrapped her arms around me. She was begging, please, I love you, please stay. I promised you that I didn't lie about anything else. I was so angry and let down, and I felt broken, but I had two choices. Walk away right there and then and forget it, an $80,000 loss and a lot of heartbreak, or stay there and play things by ear and see how things turned out. If she starts doing things that I don't like, if she does anything else like this, then I can go later and it wouldn't have cost me anything really. If she starts asking for extra money or anything, if she starts asking for anything other than the financial support that I give her regularly to take care of her kids, then I can reevaluate. While I'm thinking, she's still pleading with me, and I sort of breathe out and calm down a bit, and I say, can you promise me there are no other secrets? She looked at me dead in the eye and promised, and I told her if I found out anything else, I'm gone. With that, she told me she loved me again, and she picked up my bag and took it inside the house and went to put it in the bedroom. When I walked through the door and her kids were there on the couch, they looked at me, and her mom looked at me. I think her mom knew that she hadn't told me about them, but when I saw them there, I wasn't as angry anymore. If this is the only thing she kept from me, perhaps it's not really so bad. The house was everything I expected it to be. Our bedroom was nice, there was a bedroom set up for the kids, and we had a spare bedroom. Nice bathroom, nice kitchen. It was a really nice house, and a beautiful beach was a 5-minute walk away. I was in a great place with a great girl, and yes, she had kids, and I just tried to overlook that fact. That was 7 years ago, and we are still living together. The only money she gets is a monthly allowance that she can use for anything she wants to use it for. Part of her monthly allowance has to be spent on anything I personally wouldn't want to pay for. If she wants to help with her family with something, it has to come out of her allowance. If she wants to buy something for her kids, she has to use her allowance. And true to her word, we go to places all the time and her kids stay with her mom. There will come a point over the next 10 years when I get too old to do things, and she has never done anything other than lie to me about having kids to indicate that she's not who she says she is. I'm going to be 60 soon, and she's a lot younger than me, but I leave it up to you to decide. When something eventually happens to me, everything I have will be split 3 ways between my 2 kids and her, and she knows that. She's still more than she'd ever have seen otherwise, and I think that's fair because it's just the way it is. I was very close to turning around and running away when I found out about those kids, but I've grown to get to know them, and they're just like any other kids, want to enjoy their life and have a good time. And I suppose she did lie to me, but she did it for her kids, and aside from that, she is still a great wife. I couldn't dream of a better one, and things are working, but I still think from time to time if I did the right thing. That's the thing. If she didn't have kids, she wouldn't have done the things she did with me. She wouldn't be with me if she didn't have kids, because she'd be free to chase her other dreams. and life is as good as we make it. I know many people will listen to this and think I'm crazy for accepting that. I think I'm crazy sometimes, but what else could I do?